Respect is never given cheaply. It is not granted because of what you own, nor because of the words you throw into the air. Respect lives in the quiet chambers of perception, where others are always watching, always weighing, always testing. Long before they speak your name with honor, they will measure the depth of your silence, the steadiness of your choices, and the truth that flickers behind your eyes. These tests are rarely announced. They come in the smallest, most unguarded moments, when you believe no one is looking. Yet it is precisely there, in those subtle trials, that the foundation of respect is either built or broken. Watch till the end, hit subscribe, and remember, the real change begins now. Have you ever noticed how uncomfortable silence feels when you're in a room with others? You might feel the pressure to say something, anything just to fill the space. This is not just social awkwardness. It is your nervous system reacting to an old pattern. The fear that if you don't speak, you will not be seen, valued, or accepted. Carl Jung often pointed to this tension between what we show the world, the persona, and what we hide away, the shadow. Silence reveals where these two collide. Think about it. When you remain quiet, people don't just hear the absence of your voice, they feel the quality of your silence. If your silence is anxious, it leaks through your body language. The fidgeting, the forced smile, the shallow breathing. Others pick up on it immediately, often without realizing. But if your silence is grounded, calm, and self-assured, it carries weight. People sense that you don't need to explain yourself to prove worth. This is the silence of presence rather than the silence of fear. Why does this distinction matter? It goes back to childhood conditioning. Many of us were taught directly or indirectly that speaking up was necessary to gain approval. If you grew up in an environment where you had to explain yourself constantly or where your voice was ignored until you made it louder, silence became associated with powerlessness. Over time, you unconsciously learned that silence equals invisibility. This belief can follow you into adulthood, shaping how you carry yourself in relationships, work, and conflict. Jung's idea of individuation, the process of becoming your whole self, requires that you confront these hidden beliefs. Silence, in this sense, becomes a mirror. It forces you to notice the part of you that is terrified of being unseen. This is your shadow, the rejected child who still believes they must justify their existence through words, explanations, or constant performance. When you deny this shadow, you overcompensate, speaking louder, defending harder, or explaining excessively, all in an attempt to silence the inner fear of not being enough. But here's the hidden truth. Silence itself is not weakness. It is only weak when it is filled with fear. When you face the shadow that tells you silence equals rejection, you discover something different. Silence can be strength because it reflects trust. Trust in yourself, trust that your presence is enough, and trust that not every gap needs to be filled with noise. This realization doesn't mean you stop speaking up. It means your words no longer come from desperation. They come from choice. And when you do choose silence, it carries a gravity that others cannot ignore. They recognize that your quiet is not avoidance but authority. An authority rooted in the integration of shadow and self. In the end, the measure of silence is not how others react to it, but how you hold yourself within it. When you can sit in silence without collapsing into fear or scrambling for validation, you have taken a step toward individuation. You are no longer the child performing to be seen, but the adult anchored in presence. And in that space, silence speaks louder than any defense ever could. Have you ever wondered why people sometimes hesitate to trust you, even if you believe your intentions are good? It's not usually about a single action or mistake. What others pay attention to is your pattern, the way you show up over time. This is why sudden bursts of effort often don't matter as much as the steady rhythm of your behavior. Carl Jung observed that much of what you do is influenced by unconscious conditioning. Your nervous system repeats patterns learned in childhood, and those patterns either create reliability or inconsistency in your adult life. Think back to your early experiences. If the environment around you was unstable, where rules changed, depending on moods or promises were broken often, your nervous system learned to adapt by becoming inconsistent yourself. You may start things with enthusiasm, but struggle to finish them. You may say yes in the moment, but withdraw later when the pressure feels too much. This is not simply laziness or lack of willpower. It's the shadow of your past, shaping your present. Consistency is deeply connected to Jung's idea of the persona, the mask you wear to function in society. Outwardly, you may try to present yourself as dependable, responsible, or trustworthy. But beneath that mask lies another part of you, the shadow, that carries the unconscious fear of being trapped, controlled, or rejected. When these hidden fears are triggered, you unconsciously break your own rhythm. You cancel plans, avoid responsibilities, or lose momentum, often without fully understanding why. This is where the hidden belief emerges. If I commit too much, I will lose myself. For many people, consistency feels threatening because it brings up memories of being forced into roles as a child, being the reliable one, the caretaker, or the peacemaker. Your body remembers how exhausting it was to maintain stability for others, and so as an adult, you resist consistency even when it would benefit you. What looks like unreliability on the surface is often a nervous system still reacting to old wounds. But here is the turning point. Consistency does not have to mean self-sacrifice. When you integrate this shadow, the fear of losing yourself, through commitment, you begin to see that small, steady actions actually strengthen your sense of self, rather than erase it. Each time you follow through on a promise, even a small one, you teach your nervous system that reliability is not a prison. It is freedom. It creates a stable foundation for your relationships, your work, and your own inner peace. Awareness is the first step. By noticing the moments when you resist consistency, you begin to uncover the unconscious belief driving it. From there, you can choose differently. This is part of individuation, Jung's term for becoming whole. You learn that consistency is not about perfection or rigidity, but about alignment. Making sure that who you are today can be trusted to show up again tomorrow. And when that rhythm is established, both you and those around you feel the weight of its reliability. Have you ever noticed how people test you in subtle ways? A friend makes a joke at your expense, a coworker pushes extra tasks onto you, or someone close to you dismisses your no as negotiable. These moments are not always malicious, but they do reveal something important. People are trying to sense where your edges are, and if those edges are unclear, others will keep pressing, consciously or unconsciously. Carl Jung's work on the shadow and persona helps explain why boundaries feel so difficult to maintain and why they matter so deeply for your psychological health. Boundaries are not just about saying no. They are about communicating, both to yourself and others, what you will and will not allow. When you grew up in an environment where your needs were ignored, mocked, or punished, your nervous system learned that holding boundaries was unsafe. As a child, you may have felt that pushing back would lead to rejection, anger, or withdrawal from those you depended on. To survive, you adapted by softening yourself, staying agreeable, or erasing your own limits. This adaptation becomes part of your persona, the mask you wear to stay accepted. But beneath that mask lies the shadow, the part of you that carries resentment, exhaustion, or hidden anger from years of overgiving and self-abandonment. When you constantly allow others to cross your limits, your shadow quietly builds pressure. That pressure eventually leaks out as passive aggression, emotional withdrawal, or sudden bursts of anger. You might tell yourself you're being nice or easygoing, but unconsciously, you're paying a heavy price. At the core of this struggle is a hidden belief. If I assert my boundaries, I will lose love. This belief is not rational, but it is deeply emotional, tied to early conditioning. Your body remembers the fear of being left out or punished for standing your ground. That memory still shapes your adult reactions, making boundaries feel dangerous when in truth they are essential for healthy relationships. The turning point comes when you recognize that boundaries are not walls meant to isolate you. They are signals of self-respect. When you hold a boundary calmly and consistently, you are not pushing people away. You are teaching them how to interact with you in a way that is sustainable. Paradoxically, the clearer your boundaries, the safer others feel with you because they know where you stand. Jung spoke of individuation as the process of integrating the hidden parts of yourself. Learning to set boundaries is a crucial part of that process. It means reclaiming the voice that was silenced in childhood and allowing it to guide you now. Each time you say no without collapsing into guilt, you strengthen your sense of self. Each time you hold firm against subtle intrusions, you remind your nervous system that safety comes not from compliance, but from authenticity. In the end, boundaries are a form of currency. They quietly communicate your worth, and others respond accordingly. When you respect your own edges, you discover an empowering truth. People may not always like your boundaries, but they will respect them. And if they don't, they reveal themselves as unworthy of the space they seek in your life. Have you ever noticed how different you feel when no one is watching? There's a certain freedom, but also a certain test. When the spotlight is gone and the applause is absent, the choices you make in private reveal more about you than any performance in public. People sense this more than you realize. They notice whether your words align with your actions, even in the small details. Respect is not built on what you declare about yourself, but on what others quietly observe when they see you without a stage. Carl Jung spoke often about the tension between the persona, the image you show the world, and the shadow, the hidden parts you would rather not expose. Integrity sits exactly at this meeting point. From childhood, you were taught how to present yourself in ways that earned approval. Maybe you learned to be polite, to appear responsible, or to act strong, even when you felt weak inside. These patterns became your persona, the mask you used to navigate social life. But underneath, your unconscious holds a different story. Perhaps you cut corners when no one is looking, tell half-truths to avoid conflict, or bend your values when pressure rises. These contradictions live in the shadow. They are not signs of evil, but of unexamined parts of yourself shaped by old fears and survival strategies. The real trial of integrity comes when you are alone. Do you keep promises to yourself with the same seriousness that you keep them to others? Do you follow through when there is no reward waiting? Often, the hidden belief that drives inconsistency is this: what I do in private doesn't matter. This belief is learned early, when you saw authority figures act one way in public and another in private. As a child, you absorbed the message that duplicity is normal. Your nervous system then adapted by separating outer performance from inner truth. But here lies the danger. When you repeatedly act against your own values in the dark, your psyche fragments. You begin to feel disconnected from yourself, caught between the persona you project and the shadow you avoid. Jung warned that this split creates inner conflict, anxiety, and even depression, because a divided self cannot feel whole. The unconscious will always find ways to bring these contradictions to the surface, often through guilt, projection, or broken trust in relationships. The empowering shift comes when you realize that integrity is not about perfection, but about alignment. Each small choice you make in private is a chance to integrate shadow and persona into a more unified self. When your actions in the dark match the values you claim in the light, you strengthen the foundation of who you are. People may never see every detail of what you do, but they will feel the coherence in your presence. Integrity, then, is not about what you show the world. It is about whether you can respect yourself when the world is not watching. And once you begin to live in that alignment, you not only gain others' respect, you gain something deeper. Trust in yourself, the cornerstone of individuation. Have you ever paid attention to how you act around people who can give you nothing in return? The server at the restaurant, the janitor in your building, the child who interrupts your thoughts. These interactions may feel insignificant, but they reveal more about your character than the moments when you're in front of someone powerful. People often notice how you treat those with little influence, and their observations quietly shape how much they trust or respect you. Carl Jung's insights into the persona and shadow help explain why these seemingly small encounters carry such weight. Your persona, the mask you wear to function in society, is often designed to impress those who hold authority, influence, or status. It adapts to please teachers, bosses, or people whose approval you feel you need. But when the stakes are low and no one is watching, the mask slips. What comes out in those moments is less filtered, often the raw material of your unconscious attitudes. If impatience, superiority, or disregard shows itself, it is usually a signal of shadow dynamics at work. This shadow is often formed in childhood. If you grew up in an environment where power was unevenly distributed, where you were dismissed, overlooked, or treated as less important, your nervous system absorbed that hierarchy. Unconsciously, you may have learned that some people matter more than others. As an adult, without realizing, you might repeat that same dynamic by offering exaggerated politeness to authority figures, while minimizing the dignity of those you see as powerless. These patterns are not simply bad habits, they are imprints of emotional memory. Here lies the hidden belief. Respect is something I must give strategically, not freely. This belief keeps you calculating who deserves kindness and who does not, usually based on how much they can benefit you. But what you are really revealing in these small moments is not the image of your persona, but the truth of yourself. And others, even without consciously analyzing, can sense the dissonance. They remember how you treated the ones who couldn't elevate you, and it shapes their sense of who you truly are. The shift happens when you recognize that consistency of respect is not weakness, it is strength. By treating even the smallest with dignity, you are not performing for them. You are aligning with your own integrity. Jung's process of individuation calls for this integration, bridging the gap between the persona's polished image and the shadow's hidden contempt or indifference. When you bring awareness to these unconscious reactions, you begin to embody respect as a principle rather than a performance. In the end, respect flows most powerfully when it is not selective. The way you respond to the unnoticed is a mirror, reflecting your inner state. When you extend dignity even to those who hold no power over you, you demonstrate a grounded self that no longer relies on masks or calculation. And in doing so, you gain not only the respect of others, but a deeper respect for yourself, the kind that forms the foundation of true psychological wholeness. Have you ever caught yourself acting one way with some people and almost like a different person with others? Perhaps at work you present as confident and agreeable, while in private you feel tired, uncertain, or even resentful. This gap between who you appear to be and who you actually are is something Carl Jung explored deeply through his ideas of the persona and the shadow. People may not consciously analyze this gap in you, but they sense it. They notice whether your presence feels coherent or whether it fractures into roles and masks. From an early age, you were conditioned to adjust yourself to fit in. As a child, you learned which parts of you were rewarded and which parts brought disapproval. If you were praised for being polite, strong, or helpful, you built those traits into your persona. If you were shamed for being angry, needy, or vulnerable, those traits were pushed into the shadow. This conditioning was a survival strategy. Your nervous system adapted to ensure connection and safety. But over time, the cost became a split between outer appearance and inner reality. This split shows up in adulthood in subtle ways. You may find yourself agreeing outwardly while feeling resentment inside. You may project confidence publicly, but collapse into self-doubt when alone. Or you may constantly perform roles: the achiever, the caretaker, the peacemaker, even when those roles no longer reflect your authentic self. The unconscious belief underneath is often this: if I show my true self, I will lose acceptance. That fear keeps you clinging to masks even when they exhaust you. Jung's concept of individuation addresses exactly this conflict. Individuation is the process of integrating your shadow and persona into a more whole, authentic self. It requires facing the uncomfortable truth that some of the roles you play are not genuine expressions of who you are, but defenses created in childhood. When you ignore this, your presence feels divided. Others may not know why, but they sense the dissonance. Trust weakens because the person they see does not fully align with the person you are. The empowering realization comes when you begin to let your outer presence align with your inner reality. This does not mean discarding every social role, but rather reducing the gap between the image you project and the truth you carry. When you acknowledge your shadow, the insecurities, the anger, the vulnerability, and no longer hide it from yourself, you become less dependent on masks. Your presence feels grounded, not because it is flawless, but because it is real. At this final gate, respect cannot be forced. It arises naturally when others sense that you are not pretending. They see that your words, your body language, and your quiet moments all point to the same person. Authentic presence is not about perfection, it is about coherence. And when you embody that coherence, you carry an authority that requires no performance, the authority of someone who has begun to live as a whole self.